Dedication as a foundation represents one of the most powerful forces behind any form of lasting achievement. It is the deep, unwavering resolve to remain focused and intentional, even when circumstances become difficult or discouraging. Dedication is not a fleeting burst of enthusiasm or a temporary surge of energy. Rather, it is a persistent and grounded commitment that stretches over time, transcending mood, convenience, and momentary motivation. It is what keeps individuals moving forward when inspiration fades and what sustains progress long after the initial excitement has passed. In many ways, dedication serves as the underlying structure upon which all meaningful progress is built. When someone chooses to dedicate themselves to a goal, whether it be personal growth, a career, a craft, or a cause, they are making a conscious decision to prioritize it above distractions, comfort, and sometimes even short-term pleasure. This decision, repeated daily through deliberate action, becomes a powerful habit. Over time, these consistent efforts accumulate, building both skill and character. Dedication helps refine not only external results, but internal qualities like patience, perseverance, and resilience. It teaches a person how to stay focused in the face of chaos, how to find meaning in repetition, and how to trust the process even when results are slow or unseen. True dedication often begins in quiet moments, not in grand gestures. It might be the choice to wake up an hour earlier each day to practice, to read, or to reflect. It could be the refusal to quit after failure, or the ability to return again and again to something that feels just out of reach. Dedication doesn't always look glamorous. In fact, it can be deeply mundane, repeating drills, refining routines, handling details. But it is in these small, consistent efforts that greatness is shaped. Dedication asks us to care deeply enough about something that we are willing to show up for it every day, regardless of whether anyone else notices or acknowledges it. In a world often focused on speed and instant results, dedication represents a quiet form of rebellion. It says, "I am in this for the long haul." While talent might open a door, dedication ensures that a person keeps walking through it. Without dedication, even the most gifted individuals can stall or drift. With it, even modest talents can be honed into something powerful and impactful. It turns dreams into goals and goals into reality, simply because it demands consistent action. Dedication bridges the gap between desire and accomplishment. It does not wait for the perfect time, nor does it rely on external validation. It simply acts again and again. Dedication also creates clarity. When a person is dedicated, their priorities begin to align more naturally. Distractions fall away more easily because there is a deeper reason behind each choice. This sense of purpose can bring immense focus and drive. It allows someone to say no to the things that do not serve their larger aim, and yes to the harder path that leads to growth. It shapes discipline and creates a mindset of endurance. Rather than seeing setbacks as failures, the dedicated person views them as part of the process, opportunities to learn and adjust. This mental shift is what allows them to sustain effort through adversity. Importantly, dedication is not about perfection. It does not require flawless execution or unbroken streaks of success. What it does require is a return to intention, a willingness to begin again after a mistake or pause. It is about recommitting even when the journey is longer or more difficult than expected. This capacity to return, to stay engaged despite imperfections, is where dedication gains its real power. It recognizes that growth is not linear and that what matters most is staying connected to the reason behind the effort. Dedication also fosters a sense of integrity. It challenges a person to be consistent not just in actions, but in values. It asks whether your behavior aligns with what you say you care about. Over time, this alignment builds self-respect and confidence. It is one thing to aspire to something, and another entirely to live in accordance with that aspiration day in and day out. Dedication is what turns that aspiration into reality. It is the follow through, the staying power, the quiet discipline that transforms good intentions into lived experience. Even in collaborative settings, dedication is a force that elevates everyone involved. When individuals are deeply committed, their energy influences others. It raises the bar. Teams and communities that share a sense of dedication tend to be more cohesive, more innovative, and more resilient. Dedication fuels trust, both in oneself and in others. It shows that people are willing to invest their full selves, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. This shared commitment can become a source of deep connection and collective momentum. What often goes unspoken is that dedication can also be deeply fulfilling. There is a satisfaction that comes from knowing you are giving your best to something meaningful. Even when results are delayed, even when progress is slow, there is pride in the effort itself. The act of showing up consistently builds inner strength and emotional resilience. It creates a sense of identity and purpose. In this way, dedication is not just a tool for success. It is a pathway to a more grounded and meaningful life. To live a life rooted in dedication means choosing again and again to invest your energy where it matters most. It means becoming the kind of person who follows through not because it's easy or convenient, but because it's aligned with what truly matters to you. And in the end, it is this kind of person who builds lasting impact. The world changes not through bursts of brilliance alone, but through the steady, determined actions of those who remain committed. Dedication as a foundation is not just about what you do. It is about who you become in the process. Intentional living is a conscious way of approaching life that prioritizes clarity, purpose, and meaning in everyday choices. It requires examining not just what we do, but why we do it, shifting focus from simply reacting to life's demands to actively shaping the way we experience our time, energy, and relationships. Living intentionally is about aligning actions with values and living in a way that reflects who we truly want to be, not who we drift into becoming through habit or external pressure. In a world full of distractions, noise, and constant demands for our attention, it's easy to live on autopilot. Many people find themselves caught in routines they never fully chose, working jobs they don't love, maintaining relationships that drain them, or spending time on activities that don't bring fulfillment. Without a sense of purpose guiding decisions, it's common to fall into patterns where days blur together and life starts to feel like a series of obligations rather than an opportunity to create something meaningful. Intentional living breaks that pattern. It begins with awareness, recognizing that we are making choices every day, whether we acknowledge it or not, and that each of those choices shapes our lives over time. Awareness, however, is only the first step. Living intentionally also requires reflection and honesty. It means asking yourself difficult questions. What do I truly value? What brings me a deep sense of purpose or peace? What kind of person do I want to become? The answers may not come all at once, and they may change over time, but the willingness to ask them and to let the answers influence your behavior is what sets an intentional life apart from a reactive one. This kind of inner work can feel uncomfortable, especially when it reveals misalignment between your current lifestyle and your deeper values. But discomfort is often a sign of growth, and choosing to pay attention to it rather than avoid it is an act of courage. Intentional living does not mean striving for a perfect or idealized version of life. It's not about achieving constant productivity or always feeling inspired. In fact, it often involves slowing down and doing less, but doing those few things with greater presence and care. It could look like setting boundaries that protect your peace, saying no to commitments that don't align with your priorities, or devoting more time to what truly nourishes you, be it your health, relationships, creative pursuits, or spiritual life. It's about giving yourself permission to make different choices, even if they go against what others expect or what culture glorifies. That kind of living requires a quiet strength, a deep trust in your own values and vision. One of the most powerful shifts that comes from intentional living is a change in how you relate to time. Instead of viewing time as something to be managed or filled, it becomes a sacred resource, something to be directed with purpose. This might mean choosing to spend an evening reading or resting instead of scrolling through social media, or it might mean committing a portion of your day to something that aligns with your long-term vision, even if it doesn't bring immediate reward. Over time, these small choices accumulate into a life that feels cohesive and grounded, rather than fragmented and rushed. Intentional living also transforms the way we approach goals and ambitions. Instead of chasing success for its own sake, or to meet external standards, we start to define success on our own terms. This could mean opting for depth over speed, meaning over status, or authenticity over approval. When you're guided by intention, you stop measuring yourself by other people's timelines and begin focusing on your own path. You develop a more honest relationship with achievements, seeing it not as the only measure of worth, but as one part of a well-rounded, purpose-driven life. Relationships also take on new meaning when approached intentionally. You begin to notice which connections are life-giving and which are rooted in obligation or fear. Intentional living encourages deeper listening, more presence, and a greater willingness to be vulnerable. It invites you to show up in your relationships not just out of habit, but with care and clarity. This doesn't mean every interaction is perfect or easy, but it does mean making a consistent effort to bring honesty, compassion, and alignment into how you relate to others. Another key aspect of intentional living is learning to be okay with discomfort and uncertainty. Choosing a purposeful life often means stepping away from the familiar and into the unknown. It might involve taking risks, starting over, or facing truths you've avoided. But in doing so, you gain a stronger sense of ownership over your life. You start to live with greater integrity, your actions, choices, and beliefs becoming more fully aligned. And even though the path may be challenging, it is also more fulfilling because it's rooted in something real and personal. Intentional living also requires a commitment to ongoing self-awareness. It's not a one-time decision or a single moment of clarity, but a continual practice of checking in with yourself. As you grow and evolve, so too will your intentions. What felt purposeful 5 years ago may no longer fit who you are today, and that's not a failure. It's a natural part of living with depth. Being intentional means giving yourself permission to change and staying open to new insights about yourself and the world. Ultimately, intentional living is about presence. It's about being fully engaged with your life as it is right now while still holding a vision for what it can become. It asks you to show up with awareness, with care, and with courage. It doesn't promise ease or certainty, but it does offer a kind of peace that comes from knowing you're living in a way that's true to who you are. When your actions reflect your deepest values, even the simplest moments can become meaningful. A conversation, a walk, a creative act, all of it becomes richer when approached with intention. Living intentionally is not reserved for a select few. It's available to anyone willing to pause, reflect, and make thoughtful choices. It doesn't require radical changes overnight, just a willingness to ask, is this how I want to live? And to let that question guide your next step. Over time, those steps form a path that leads not just to a better life, but to a truer one. Consistency over time is one of the most underestimated yet powerful principles for achieving anything meaningful in life. In a world that often celebrates rapid success, instant gratification, and viral moments, the value of showing up day after day, steadily and faithfully, can seem dull or unimpressive. But when you look closely at anyone who has mastered a skill, built something lasting, or made a significant impact, what you almost always find is not a series of dramatic breakthroughs, but the quiet, patient work of consistency. It's this steady rhythm of action, repeated over months and years, that creates momentum, builds mastery, and transforms effort into excellence. At its core, consistency is about alignment between intention and behavior. It's the practice of doing what you said you would do not just once, but regularly. This is not to say you must be perfect. Life will always include fluctuations, unexpected challenges, and off days. But consistency does not demand perfection. It demands commitment. It asks that you return to your goal or habit even after setbacks. It requires that you keep showing up, not because every day brings dramatic progress, but because you trust in the long-term power of repetition. What makes consistency difficult is that it often lacks immediate payoff. You can eat healthy for a week and see no physical changes. You can write every day for a month and still struggle to find your voice. You can practice your craft diligently and feel stuck in the same place. This delay between effort and reward can be discouraging, but this is where consistency becomes a form of discipline. It invites you to act not for the sake of instant results, but because you are building something bigger than a single outcome. You are shaping who you become through the repetition of effort, and over time that has a compounding effect. There is a kind of quiet strength that develops through sustained consistency. Each time you follow through on a commitment, especially when it's inconvenient or unrewarded, you build a deeper level of trust in yourself. You begin to prove to yourself that you are the kind of person who honors your word, who follows through, who can be counted on. This internal reliability is a powerful foundation. It becomes easier to take risks, set bigger goals, or stretch into uncomfortable areas because you know you won't abandon yourself along the way. You've trained yourself to persist. Consistency also builds structure into your life. It creates rhythms and routines that reduce decision fatigue and help anchor your attention. When a behavior becomes habitual, it no longer requires constant motivation or willpower. It becomes part of your identity. Instead of needing to decide whether to practice, create, or reflect, you simply do it because it's part of your day. This reduces resistance and frees up mental energy for deeper focus. Over time, consistent habits turn aspiration into action. They create stability in the midst of life's chaos, offering a reliable framework that you can return to even when things feel uncertain or out of control. There is also something deeply honest about consistency. It doesn't pretend, it doesn't rely on charisma or hype. It is grounded in effort. It's easy to talk about goals, to dream big, or to get inspired for a moment, but the true test of a commitment is whether it holds up over time. Consistency reveals what you truly value, because it's reflected in where your time and energy go repeatedly. If you want to know what matters to you, look at what you do consistently, not occasionally, not ideally, but habitually. That's the clearest window into your priorities. Consistency becomes especially important when motivation fades. In the beginning of any pursuit, there is often a wave of excitement. Everything feels new, energizing, and filled with possibility. But eventually, that excitement wears off, and what's left is the work, the repetition, the practice, the small, unglamorous actions. This is the point at which many people quit, thinking the lack of motivation means they've lost interest or that they're on the wrong path. But in truth, this is simply the transition from inspiration to discipline, and discipline, fueled by consistency, is what sustains progress after the honeymoon phase is over. Over time, consistency can do something that intensity cannot. It builds depth. While bursts of intense effort may bring short-term gains, they are difficult to sustain. What matters more is whether you can keep showing up day after day with care and focus. This is how you refine your skills, deepen your understanding, and grow more fully into your potential. Each repetition is a small investment in mastery. Alone, it may not seem like much, but together, these repetitions accumulate into something powerful. You might not notice the change day to day, but over months and years, the difference becomes undeniable. One of the challenges of consistency is that it often happens in solitude. You may be doing important work, but no one is watching. There are no applause, no milestones, no external recognition. It's just you practicing the habit, writing the words, doing the workout, studying the material. This can feel thankless or invisible, but it's in this unseen effort that the real transformation occurs. It teaches you to work for the sake of growth, not validation. And eventually, what was once private effort can lead to public excellence, but only if you're willing to stay the course without immediate rewards. Consistency is also deeply connected to resilience. Life will inevitably bring challenges, illness, disappointment, change, loss. In these moments, consistency offers a lifeline. It's not about rigidly maintaining every habit no matter what, but about staying rooted in your values and intentions even when the ground shifts. It might mean adjusting your pace, scaling back, or taking a pause, but it also means returning when you're ready to what matters. The more consistent you've been over time, the easier it is to find your footing again. Your routines become familiar ground, a place of stability when everything else feels uncertain. Perhaps most importantly, consistency teaches patience. In a culture that often values speed and shortcuts, consistency asks you to trust the process. It says that growth is not always fast, that change is not always dramatic, and that progress is often slow and steady, but it is also real. It builds roots. It creates a foundation that lasts. When you look back after a year of consistent effort, you realize how far you've come, not because of one breakthrough moment, but because you kept going, kept learning, and kept building even when it was hard. Consistency over time is not glamorous. It rarely makes headlines, but it is one of the most transformative forces available to anyone. It requires patience, discipline, humility, and belief, not just in the outcome, but in the value of the process itself. It's how you earn trust, build skill, deepen character, and move from dreaming about something to actually living it. It's not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because in the end, the life you build is not the result of what you do once in a while. It's the result of what you do consistently. Dedication as a foundation is often what separates temporary effort from lasting achievement. It is the deep commitment that keeps a person moving forward long after the initial excitement has faded. Dedication is not based on emotion, convenience, or circumstance. It is rooted in intention and sustained through discipline. When something truly matters to you, when it aligns with your core values or deepest goals, dedication becomes the force that allows you to pursue it with persistence, clarity, and resilience. It is the fuel behind long-term progress, the quiet force that drives people to practice, improve, and endure. At first glance, dedication might appear similar to motivation, but they are very different in nature. Motivation is often momentary, sparked by inspiration or external rewards. It can be powerful, but it is unreliable. It ebbs and flows, sometimes present and sometimes absent. Dedication, on the other hand, is steady. It does not rely on feelings. It is a choice you continue to make even on the days when you are tired, discouraged, or uninspired. Dedication is what shows up in the early mornings, the late nights, the weekends. It is what keeps you engaged even when progress is slow and recognition is non-existent. There is something powerful about committing to something not just because it's exciting, but because it matters to you. That kind of commitment changes your relationship with time and effort. You begin to see the process as meaningful in itself, not just a means to an end. Every repetition, every hour of focus, every small step becomes part of something larger. You learn to value the journey, not just the results. This shift in perspective is one of the most profound benefits of true dedication. It transforms work into purpose, effort into growth, and persistence into character. Dedication also brings clarity. When you are fully committed to something, your decisions become simpler. You know what to prioritize, what to say no to, and where to direct your energy. Distractions still exist, but they lose their power. You stop chasing after every new idea or opportunity because you have already chosen what matters most. This focus makes your work deeper, more refined, and more aligned with your values. You don't waste energy constantly reevaluating your path, you walk it. Even when it's difficult, you move forward because you've already decided it's worth it. In times of struggle or uncertainty, dedication becomes a stabilizing force. There will always be moments when doubt creeps in, when you question your path, your progress, or your purpose. In those moments, dedication is what keeps you from giving up. It reminds you why you started, why it matters, and what you're capable of. It doesn't promise ease, but it does offer strength. The kind of strength that isn't loud or flashy, but enduring. The kind of strength that quietly says, keep going. When you are truly dedicated, quitting is no longer a default option. Adjusting, learning, resting, those might be necessary, but abandoning the purpose is not. There's also a connection between dedication and identity. Over time, what you commit to becomes a part of who you are. If you dedicate yourself to writing, you become a writer. If you dedicate yourself to kindness, you become a person known for compassion. If you dedicate yourself to growth, you become someone who continues evolving no matter what. This identity shift is subtle but powerful. It reinforces your behavior, shapes your self-image, and deepens your sense of purpose. It creates a feedback loop where commitment strengthens character, and character strengthens commitment. One of the less talked about aspects of dedication is that it requires sacrifice. To give your full energy to one thing often means giving less to others. Time, attention, and effort are limited resources, and dedication means choosing where to invest them. It might mean spending less time on entertainment, letting go of certain social habits, or saying no to opportunities that don't align with your goals. These sacrifices aren't always easy, but they're necessary. True dedication isn't just about what you're willing to do, it's about what you're willing to give up. And what you choose to give up says as much about your values as what you pursue. Dedication is also a deeply personal process. What it looks like for one person may be completely different for another. For some, it's practicing an instrument every day for years. For others, it's showing up consistently in a relationship, a cause, or a profession. The outer form doesn't matter as much as the inner commitment. Dedication is not measured by how visible or grand your efforts are, but by how true and sustained they are. You don't have to be the most talented, the most well-known, or the fastest to succeed. If you're dedicated, truly dedicated, you will grow, you will improve, you will move forward. Time is the great revealer of dedication. In the short term, many people can appear committed, but over time, only those with true dedication remain. This is not because they have more willpower or better conditions. It's because they've made a decision over and over again to keep going. They've chosen consistency over comfort, growth over ease, purpose over popularity. They've done the work in the shadows without applause because the work itself mattered. And because of that, they've built something solid, something that lasts. Dedication as a foundation doesn't just affect external outcomes. It also changes how you experience life. It brings depth, richness, and meaning to your days. You begin to feel that you are living on purpose, not just reacting to whatever comes. There is a quiet fulfillment that comes from knowing you are honoring what matters most to you. Even when progress is slow or invisible to others, you know it's happening. You feel it in your mindset, your actions, and your sense of self. It's also important to remember that dedication doesn't mean rigidity. It's possible to be deeply committed and still remain flexible. Life changes, circumstances shift. Sometimes what you're dedicated to will evolve. That's not a betrayal of your commitment. It's a sign of growth. Dedication isn't about locking yourself into a path forever. It's about showing up fully to what matters now and having the courage to adapt when your truth changes. It's about staying connected to purpose, even when the form of that purpose transforms. In the end, dedication is not about perfection, recognition, or status. It's about choosing again and again to live in alignment with what matters most. It's about building your life on a foundation of purpose, discipline, and integrity. That foundation may not be glamorous, but it is strong. It can carry you through challenge, doubt, and change. It can help you create something meaningful, something you're proud of. Because when you are truly dedicated, you're not just working toward a goal. You're becoming someone who honors the path itself.